Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Rap Thought Podcast.
Welcome back.
Episode 30, you said?
This will be episode 30 unless something else happens and it becomes not 30.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But for now, this one's episode 30.
Yes.
So this week, do you know what we're listening to? Matthew knows what we're listening to. We listened to Logic's No Pressure, which just dropped 2 weeks ago.
And according to him, it's his last album.
It's
his retirement album.
He is
which
retiring.
I don't know. I'm not putting too much credence into that, as the kids say.
I don't think so. I mean, he's born in 1990. He's
our age.
He's basically our age. He's a little younger. So he's going to turn 30, or he turned 30.
He turned 30.
And I just think of like in high school, I remember when Jay-Z retired. And it's like, shit, Jay-Z's done. But he's been
retired he retired 6 albums ago.
That's my point. Is like when we were in high school, he was like, Black Album, I'm done. And then 2-3 years later, he's back with Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
Or I think American Gangster.
My prediction is that Logic he signed a deal with Twitch, so I think he's going to be on Twitch for 2 or 3 years, and then he will drop an album in 2024. Is my guess. That's what I'm putting out there.
I'm all right with that. I was going to say like, not based off of Jay-Z, who came back in the same time frame, but I bet, I don't know Logic that well, but I think he's going to come back in the next couple, within 5 years. He'll come back. He's not done.
No, I don't think so either. But I think it's a great way to sell albums, to say you're retiring. It's a great way. I think one thing that'll be interesting to know, which I didn't look up and I don't know, but is his contract with Def Jam over? Does he owe them any more albums? Because I think that's a really important thing to consider, because if this album fulfills his contract and he doesn't have to make another album, then
you can count him out.
I can see him not coming back for a while and then releasing independently or through another label. But if he does still owe them an album, he will be back sooner than later.
I'm going to try and get an answer for that before we finish, because I meant to look that up as well, and I forgot.
Yeah.
So
before we get too much farther into the album, I want to thank all of our listeners out there. Thank you for checking us out on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, also on YouTube. Don't forget, we do post videos of me and Brandon speaking to each other live and uncut. So you can see little clips of that, so you see what we look like.
Damn, live and uncut in the flesh. Damn.
We do post the full episodes on there in audio format if you prefer to listen on YouTube, which some people do, I'm sure.
I'm feeling some judgment, like some people do, kind of thing.
No, I'm just saying it. Like if they don't have Apple or Spotify,
I'm just saying I felt judged by what you said. I'm not even a YouTuber, so.
Let's get into Logic. What was your introduction to Logic?
So, great question, because I forgot to touch on that. So I've mentioned in a couple podcasts, I work with special needs kids, and don't think that any of these kids are dumb or low function or anything like that at all. But, two of my guys that are older, and trying to like get to know them and hang out, I had asked them like, so who's someone that you guys listen to? Like, we listen. Both of them not together, but they both said Logic. And one was 18 at the time. The other one I think was 16. The thing that they both said though was that they both recommended Under Pressure, and they both said that after I think it was before that album, Logic fell off. He wasn't that great. He's kind of hit or miss, but Under Pressure was a really good album. So I queued that up. I listened to it, and I was like, okay, this is good in terms of like current hip hop people, like current young people. Like this is all right.
Of the newer generation.
Yeah, good way to put it. Yeah, so I got on board. He's not someone that I'm like gonna go and get his new album that just came out or anything, but I mean, if you can play that and be like, okay, cool. He's got some cool stuff that he talks about.
So you were never really into Logic. You were kind of introduced to it passively, or just people mentioned it and you're like, oh, okay, let me check it out now.
It's one of those where someone gets mentioned enough, and especially when he gets mentioned enough, you want to look into it, and then especially to like try to build a bridge with the kids that you're working with. That was
Right.
the motivation to do it.
Yeah. So I actually found out about Logic when he put out his first mixtape back in 2010, which was Young, Broke, and Infamous, I believe. Yes, Young, Broke, and Infamous came out in December of 2010, which is a long time ago, 10 years ago.
Damn.
And he was young. I'm the same age as him, so he was 20. So he's super young, putting that mixtape out, and I thought it was really dope. I loved it. To me, when I first heard that, I was like, okay, this kid is gonna be something. He's gonna blow up. I could just tell by the way he was rapping. And back then, it was a mixtape, and during that era, you would rap over other people's beats a lot. But I liked the choices of beats that he was rapping over. He was rapping over like Big L and The Roots and Large Professor. So he's rapping over boom bap, dope, like 90s era hip hop beats. And so I was like, okay, this kid, he's onto something. And then he releases the Young Sinatra mixtape the next year, which I also thought was really dope. And I'm like, okay, like this kid's gonna blow up. Like it's gonna happen. And then I think he puts out a few more mixtapes in the Young Sinatra series. And then he puts out his debut album, which is Under Pressure, I believe. Yeah, that was the first like major label release that he put out, produced by No ID. And I remember hearing it for the first time, and I didn't get the same feeling I got when I listened to his mixtapes. I kind of felt underwhelmed. I was like, it's still cool. I enjoyed it, but it didn't make me more of a fan. I kind of stepped away after that album and kind of backed off, and I was like, okay, it's cool, but it's not, not really for me at this time. And then he keeps releasing albums, and it keeps going downhill from there.
I think that's what my guys were talking about. Like, because I remember there's another person too that dropped mixtapes and they like those, and I'll probably remember randomly. And then, but maybe that they were referring to Logic as well too. Like the mixtapes were good, Under Pressure was great, and then it went downhill after that.
Yeah, and we don't have to get into all of those albums because he released quite a few. But yeah, so that was kind of, and after that, I really didn't really listen to him anymore. I think I did listen once or twice through some of his other albums when they came out, like Everybody and Bobby Tarantino and Young Sinatra 4. I thought they were cool, but nothing grabbed me. Nothing made me want to listen to those albums again and become like a real fan of Logic. So that's been my experience with him.
So where did you hear Logic? Like, did you hear him from friends? Did you hear a single
Online.
on the radio?
No, I think because at that time, 2010, that's the blog era, right, of hip hop. So I'm sure I heard about him from Two Dope Boys or one of the other blogs and just downloaded his mixtape because everything was for free back then. It was like they just post the MediaFire link and you get the whole mixtape. So I'm sure that's how I found out about him. And then, yeah, after his major label release, he just fell off for me. I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think he was terrible. He's extremely talented. And
Just didn't do it for you.
he didn't do it for me. And I think a lot of it was the same as the other criticisms that he was getting at the time, was that he was copying a lot of other artists' style, namely Kendrick Lamar. I get a lot of Lupe Fiasco influence from him. So
We'll definitely have to talk about that as we go through the tracks, because it's not just interpolating someone's verse, but a lot of the beats that he's sampled are all, thrown to people that he is, I look up to this person. So it's almost like is it corny because it's done too much, or is it cool because, hey, you're really throwing out your respect for those people?
Right.
So
I think you got to find the right balance. I mean, we just did Blue in Exile, where Blue paid homage to a lot of artists, but he was more shouting them out. He wasn't necessarily copying their style or something other, like their skill or their flow or whatever, and take that and use that for himself. And I think that can be taken one way or another. It could be a negative, it could be a positive.
Because I mean, I think about ADHD by Joyner Lucas and him, making a point to give a rose out to people that are currently living and not just when they pass away. So as we're talking about this, it's like, yeah, you kind of have to find that balance of paying homage to someone without like overly, yeah, see how much I like this person that I'm even doing their stuff and rapping to their beats.
Yeah, I think it gets a little corny. It can be corny at times.
So here's the other question, though, too, is that I'm thinking of his target audience. And so, as I mentioned, this was nice for me in terms of this new and this current generation of hip hop artists. So this may be unfair, but I don't know how much this generation of people, so let's say people in their 25 and younger, I don't know how much they're listening to hip hop from the 90s and the early 2000s.
Gotcha.
So with that said, with Logic sampling all these people, interpolating all of their stuff, do you think, as we were talking briefly beforehand, do you think they're picking up the Erykah Badu sample? Do you think they're picking up the Outkast?
Which is why I think it's pretty safe to say that most of his core fan base is young, is under 25. And hip hop fans that are our age and older will know all of the stuff that he's referencing right away, and that may put them off. It may or may not. But I think majority of his fan base is younger, and which makes sense for the type of music that he's making. It makes sense why they would be fans.
And I got to put myself into shoes for a second, because there's times where you think, well, man, because have you ever thought of like if you could rap what beats you would go off to? So, and I'm thinking about, and that's something that's grew up in our era. So I'm thinking of like, well, okay, you and I are both born in 88. Logic's born in 90. With that mindset, he's kind of doing at least what I would want to do. So I don't know. I guess it comes full circle again to like finding that balance. But I don't know. So it was just kind of an interesting point. Like, well, shit, he's not doing too much different than what I would do if I was to somewhat pay homage to the people I liked and the beats that I liked.
Yeah, but it could be too much. He's already done that on previous albums. He doesn't need to continue to do that. We get the point of who your influences were. Come up with something new that we haven't heard, or dedicate a mixtape to that.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I think you answered the question earlier of like, it's safe to assume that his fan base is younger and they're not going to pick up on any of this stuff.
Right. Or they don't care.
Or they don't care. I mean, this is our pod. It's our opinion. We can do and say whatever we want. So, but that's just, our thoughts on the matter.
Yeah. So let's get into the album. Let's get into the tracks.
Let's get into this. The one thing I do have to know is that when I saw what his name was, I was like, oh, was this guy knighted? So Logic's real name is Sir Robert Bryson Hall II, which sounds, I mean, you add on a successor, the second, you sound pretty royal. And add Sir in front of that.
It does sound English.
It sounds pretty English.
But he comes from a place very far from England and very different.
But close to where they settled when they got here. So I'll give him that. I'll give him that. So, yeah. So he, for the record, he's not knighted. That's just what his parents named him. His mom threw it in. He's named after his dad. He is from Maryland. So I can't think of too many artists out of Maryland off the top. I know there are some.
Odyssey. He's from Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more. I'm just not thinking of them.
Okay. So I wanted to say that real quick, get that out. But yeah. So this album is basically a successor to Nope for Under Pressure, which came out in 2014. Because it was 6 years. It was a 6-year reunion with him and No ID.
Right.
And so that's the album I was saying that I was first introduced to, that Matt was saying that he caught on and wasn't really feeling it as much in comparison to the mixtapes. So it's kind of similar to Blue and Exile, where they came back together for an album. Logic and No ID came back for an album.
And No ID is an incredible producer.
And he's from Good Music that I saw.
Yeah,
he's
worked with a lot of big artists. He's done some incredible stuff before, so it's great that Logic can go to a producer like a No ID
Yeah, someone that you have, as we talked about in Blues
Yeah.
episode, of like someone that you have rapport with and can
Right.
bounce ideas
Except
off.
for this intro, the No Pressure intro is actually produced by Like from Pac Div. And like he's produced for Kendrick Lamar. He's a rapper. He's in the group Pac Div. He also produces, and he's produced for Kendrick Lamar and some other artists. So I think it's dope that Like is on the production for this.
It was cool. Is that also Orson Welles in the
Yeah, that's
beginning?
Orson Welles. Yeah,
Okay.
sample.
I need to look into Orson Welles because I mean, from the beginning track is what it is, but the last one that he does is awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm familiar with some of his stuff, but not enough to really speak a lot.
Yeah,
on
it's a pretty cool sample.
But they kind of throw in their stuff, interchange some of their own things with some of his speech. But yeah, just basically talks about their reunion back together.
Yeah, it's a
And-
dope intro. I really like Logic's flow on this. I like the energy that he comes in with. He mentions where he comes from in Maryland and how he was always told he would never make it, and how he would always end up like everyone else. But then now he can say, "Yeah, you told me I would never make it, but look where I am now."
There's a couple lines that, not verses, but just a couple parts out of it that I really liked. So, I mean, that kind of, as you were to kind of build what you were saying, this whole album is just about him. Like, he references a lot of people telling him he wouldn't really amount to be anything and how he's kind of putting them to the side. And so, one of the lines I really liked was people telling you to stay in your lane who can't even drive. And he also mentions too how people are living vicariously through him. So telling him to rap a certain way, to do something. And there's a lot of in that we'll talk about later that really caught me. But I also like too how Orson Welles talks about, you can tell a story that doesn't always speak to the heart, but can speak to the spine. And so I kind of had to like pump my brakes on that for a second. I was like, damn, like, it's really the definition of that is like, we usually listen to someone because they're like, oh, that's a compelling story that really makes me feel a certain way. But sometimes someone could tell a story that just really makes you like life altering, that just makes you do something different. So even if you don't feel it within, it's just like, okay, like I'll change my mindset on that. So I don't know if that's what he was aiming to do in this album, but I just liked how that, and it kind of does in parts of it, depending on.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I really like his confidence on this. I actually really liked the Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater voice.
Snake Eater voice.
Yeah, I read that he actually got the guy that does his voice to do this for him.
That's sick.
Which is super dope. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a great way to start the album.
It really, it sets the stage. And, for throughout the rest of the album, I wouldn't say it has this like linear progression of storytelling. Like it kind of hops around, and within each song you have, there are elements to the song that you'll hear in other parts. So you're not like, okay, why is this track here? Why is this track here? You're more like, okay, like he says this in this song, so I can see where it fits.
Right.
Number 2 is Hit My Line. And so he kind of touches on everything, all the events going on in the world. One of the things I really liked about it is directly asking these people that are out there to make life difficult, like, why are you here? And why are you doing this?
Right. Yeah, he's asking a lot of questions. He's having a conversation with God as well. Like you were saying, I like the lines when he's saying, who's really doing their part? They say they don't want messages in rap. It ruins the art. Well, here I am, people. Yeah, now tear me apart. So he's pointing out, he's one of those artists that I think his taste in hip hop aligns with ours in that he likes music with depth and messages in it. Like some of his biggest influences are The Roots and other artists of that nature from that era where there was a lot of messages in the music. So he's saying, I made all this success. I've gotten to the top of the game, and everyone's telling me they don't want messages in the rap. They just want party music or just music that they don't have to think too hard about to listen to. But he's saying, no, that ruins the art. I want to put messages in the music like my favorite artist did and do it at a high level. But for me, the problem with Logic is I think he does put a lot of good messages in his music. His most popular song is the one about suicide. But for me, I think he does messages, but at a surface level. I don't think he goes deep enough.
You know, when we were talking about doing Logic, I had made the comment of like, yeah, he does rap kind of fast. And you had said, you know, a lot of his stuff is surface level. And so as I was going through his album, I kind of realized like, yeah, he doesn't really, it's not like Black Thought or Royce.
Right.
Where, you know, when we did Royce's album, like there were times I had to look people up and I had to look up quotes that he said and things like that. Like, I think what makes Logic easy to listen to is that you think you're processing a lot of information, but you're really not. But it is very, and as I've said in other pods, like I do like this because it's to the point and upfront.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I agree.
It's dope music, and I like what he does with it. I just think for me, I need a little bit more to chew on from what he's saying in his music. He raps great. He's an incredible rapper. He's got an amazing flow. He does a lot of things right. I don't think he's the best writer. He's not on a tier with a Black Thought or a Royce, like you said, or an Elzai. He's not on that tier, but he is a very entertaining rapper.
Where I want to throw in too is I feel like I do like what he says. I feel like his stuff gets kind of recycled a little bit. So I mean, through repetition, that's one of the best ways anybody can learn something. So it's like, okay, I know he grew up on Section 8. I know he grew up like not drinking. I know he grew up like with cigarettes or whatever.
Right.
It's a lot of stuff that's.
But the problem with that though is if you're repeating it on multiple songs on the same album, it gives you less incentive to revisit the album. Whereas if he only talked about each of those subjects on one song, yes, you may not. It might not stick with you after 2 or 3 listens, but if it's compelling music, you'll go back to it over and over, and eventually it'll stick.
I think I agree with that. I think it's also the way that he ties it in as well, too. So, I mean, he's going off on something else. So maybe it's another aspect of his life. And then he'll reference how Section 80 influenced that. It's like, oh, okay. So it's kind of like, not that he's going off on 6 or 7 bars on that. It's just like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, by the way, Section 80. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, by the way, Section 80. You're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, you got the point.
But yeah, like I like how you mentioned, it is like a conversation with God. And it's definitely not, when we did Joyner Lucas's album, he had a similar track, but he's like really pissed off at God and letting him have it. And this one, it's a little bit more conversational.
Yeah, he's definitely not angry. It's more... But he's not sad. It's kind of
it's just a conversation. It's just like
it's more melancholy. It's like he's just asking like, why is it like this?
And I like that he's saying that like there's so much stuff going on that like people are like kids. The only thing they should be scared of is the dark, and they're worried about bullets. They're worried about all these things. And,
right.
So he kind of touches on a couple things, but again, as you said, it's more surface. There are a couple things he doesn't go quite into detail about. But I don't remember if it's this track or a different one, but he does say like, there's a lot of stuff going on and I can't touch on all of it. And so I'm kind of like, oh, okay, like that's true. I'm not going to get mad at you because there's things that I feel like you should be talking about that you're not covering. Because that's also your other point of people trying to tell me what to rap about and trying to live through me.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to tell him to stay in his lane. Like, I don't even have a car in this rap game. So I can't. Like, how am I going to tell him to drive?
Yeah, that's true. So. And so the next song is Growing Pains 4, GP4.
GP4. I wish I listened to the other 2 because I listened to Growing Pains 3 off of Under Pressure.
Gotcha.
But...
Yeah, I think I don't remember the first 2 either, but I'm assuming they all kind of feed off of each other and talking about where he came up, his background of where he came up as a child and his, the circumstances in which he grew up, which weren't the best.
Yeah, I mean, as we were saying a song ago, he mentions quite a bit that he grew up in Section 80, and which is
I thought this song was a good continuation of the previous song. It still continued that conversation with God. So he says, "My God, if you exist, then why do you make life so hard? If you exist, the way you think is avant-garde. If you exist, you got a funny way of showing it. What happens in the afterlife? These people think they know and shit." So he's asking God. He's still asking God questions and asking, if you do exist, why is there so much pain? Why do we have to go through all of this?
the next step on that too is my auntie Betty said one time that there are people that are holier than thou. And I like that phrase because there's people that really, in terms of religion, they feel like they have something that you don't. So they will almost like hold it above you. So, he talks about how
That's a great point.
There's people in here that, they're familiar with the Bible. So they feel like they're good up to the point where it's like, well, you're below me because you don't know the knowledge that I have. And so since I'm in with the book and I'm doing everything right, I'm in God's good graces.
Right. I have a coupon to cut the line to go to heaven.
Yeah, it's like, fuck you. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's an all right. I mean, I like everything that they're talking about in here. He's talking about. But
I really like the line when he says, "We all say it, we all claim it, but it's no use. The greatest rapper alive is probably stacking produce."
Which is weird because then a couple tracks later he says that like I'm the best lyricist eventually.
Right.
Essentially.
But I think every rapper has to say that.
They all say that.
They all say that. So I don't give that any weight.
Yeah.
It's kind of overdone at this point.
I feel like anything I want to say, like to criticize, he kind of comes back in to refute. So I mean, there is a line where he says, what would I be if I didn't have a little braggadocio?
Right.
And so it's like, okay, like fine, covered that base. I guess I can't talk too much shit. But, in the album, and you and I will probably reference Under Pressure here and there. But in between tracks, Thalia, which is the voice that gives some exposition to him.
Yeah, it's kind of like an AI voice.
Do you know what I'm assuming that influence is from of her having?
For me, right away, I thought of A Tribe Called Quest from Midnight Marauders.
Yes. I put that on for the hell of it. I didn't see any reference to Midnight Marauders about this album. Yeah. I was listening to it, I want to hear them, and I was like, oh shit, this is where Logic got it from. Okay.
Yeah. And
same voice, or like, sounds the exact same.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I was kind of like, could have done without that. I didn't need you to completely copy A Tribe Called Quest, even if you are paying homage to them. But I don't think it's really necessary. Because A Tribe did that, and I thought they did it in a much better way than what he does on here.
So that's where there's going to be a little, not opposition, but another side. So when I listen to albums, like I'll listen to them as I'm doing dishes, if I'm just cleaning up or doing whatever. And so I was playing this, and my girlfriend was with me, and she ended up really liking Logic. I think I got Logic a fan. But she was saying she really liked Thalia's input in between tracks because it gave her more insight to the artist. So like when he's talking about when she mentions how long it took for the album to be created, or when she's talking about the influences that go behind it. So she liked that. And I bring that up because like in other albums where like there's this minute-long skit or 30-second or whatever, she does not like those.
Right, where it's an actual song, but it's a skit.
It's a skit.
Right.
So she doesn't like those because she feels, I don't know if it's because, hey, I'm here to listen to music, I don't need this story, but like this one was very straight to the point and quick.
You can digest it right away. It's maybe less than 10 seconds for each one.
So with her, like I don't know if she's a Tribe Called Quest fan or not, but I think that works for listeners like that where
they're not thinking of a tribe when they hear.
They're not thinking of a tribe. They're just like, okay, cool. Like this guy's interesting as it is through his music, and I just got some more insight. So all right, cool. But I mean, also from a fan growing up with music back in the day, as speaking for you, it's like, I've already heard this person already do it. You're replicating it, but not doing it Right. Like I've already had this. So like I hear both sides.
Right.
But I don't know. It's cool to hear both sides of the coin. So yeah, that was Growing Pains 4.
That was Growing Pains for it. And then next we go into Celebration.
Celebration, bitches.
This wasn't my favorite beat on the album. I thought it was okay. I thought the sample got kind of annoying.
Oh,
after a while.
wait. You said sample. The last one, we didn't bring up the sample, was Elevators by Outkast.
Right. Oh, yeah.
What did you think when you first heard that?
I didn't catch it right away, but after I listened to it for a little bit, I was like, okay, yeah, that's Outkast. I thought it was cool. I enjoyed the beat. I thought the production was great on that one.
I thought the beat was all right, but I didn't like how it's like this high-pitched version, and I don't mean high-pitched, but it's just in a different tempo than the original one is,
Right.
to where I didn't like it.
Gotcha.
So I wasn't feeling that too much, but I recognized it. I was like, oh, cool.
Right.
And as he mentions in Under Pressure, Outkast is one of his. This is what we were talking about before. Of like he has a lot of influences that he has in this album. We'll definitely keep
And
tapping
we'll touch on that a little bit more on some of the other tracks.
Definitely.
So yeah, now we're on to Celebration, which is a very straightforward rags to riches song, talking about where he came from, where he is now, and he's celebrating this moment of going out on top. He's made it. He's become an extremely successful rap artist. He's gotten everything he wanted, and like you said before, he kind of repeats some of the same messages. So in this song, he says, most people want to tell you what to do because it's what they want to do if they had an opportunity to, but too scared. That's why they live vicariously through you. So it's that same message of, they want to tell me what to do, or they want to live through me because of where I've gotten to. Which I think he spends too much time worrying about what other people think and critics and what fans want. And, he does spend a lot of, not just time, but energy and space on the album dedicated to what other people think of him.
I think that's part of the point of the album, though, of being no more pressure. No more pressure.
But he's saying he is under pressure. He's still saying, yes, I hear what the critics are saying, and it bothers me that they don't understand, and I have to do it this way. And, he's still letting it get to him. So he kind of contradicts himself sometimes throughout the album.
But do you think in this track that it's anything current, or do you think it's past tense? Because as he states,
I think
like
it's current.
You think so?
Yeah, because I just listened to an interview by him, and he straight up said he's like, I am addicted to social media. I look up my name all the time and look at what people say about me. And he said it gets to him. Like, he gets depressed from the negative comments he gets. So he really takes it in. And so knowing that, I could understand why he puts so much energy of it on the album and pointing that out. But I think it takes up too much room for me.
I'd have to see when the interview was, because there's a lot of stuff in this album that, like, as I was saying earlier, like when I want to criticize, I can think of something that he says in here that kind of refutes that. Because in here, like, he's, Celebration coming a long way, and that there's a lot to talk about. And later on in this album, I don't remember the track right now, but he says, like, he used to get upset and now he just throws his phone across the room and doesn't have to deal with it anymore. And one of the lines that my girlfriend liked too was that, he would just he references spending time just scrolling and everything, and how he doesn't really do that anymore. So That's why I think that he's bringing up things like why this is a celebration, and overall
he was
why
able to move past it.
He's moved on, and that's why there's no longer any pressure. I don't know if it's within the same verse that you had just took from, but I really liked this build up where he says, I'd rather not. That's why I'm in a mansion and you're in a cot, but you still study everything that I drop. Go to school, get a job, get married, and have kids. People from tell you, I might have typoed that. People from, I don't know, tell you what to do as long as you live, break the cycle and shoot for the stars, moonwalk like Michael. And that one really stood out to me because as I work with kids, and also with my younger siblings and also myself, like up until there's just this feel of like, if you're not married, if you don't have your bachelor's, if you're not moved out, if you don't have a house by like 25, you're not doing it right and you're too old. So I really like that last line where it's like, kind of just don't worry about all these other people. Just, kind of break that cycle, break all that shit and just move forward.
Right. Just stay true to yourself and move forward and accomplish what you want to.
And the time that you need. And, my aunt just mentioned the other day, it's like she got her master's at 56. There was a customer that came into the hardware store I worked at, and he got his master's in his 50s. Like, it really, there's no timeline. It's just from that old generation really pressing on their thoughts onto us.
Right. And we're in a completely different time and we're in a completely different age than ever before, where things we're not always gonna be able to operate like the people did before us. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a different times, and so take your time out there, peeps. It's all good. Track 5, open mic / Aquarius. He's kind of going into, if
did you know the sample I don't know who sampled this, but did you know the song that this came from?
No, I didn't pick that up.
The Roots sampled the same sample from this.
Oh yeah,
on How I Got Over.
Yeah,
but it was an interlude.
Is that because this is the track where he talks about Erykah Badu and everything. So,
but besides that, I love the beats on this. I love this beat switch up, and I really do like some of the lyrics on this. And he gets personal. He talks about his past and how he grew up. He says, "Didn't drink till I was 25 because I'm my mom's kid. All I knew was alcoholism in prison. Only saw domestic violence and racial division."
So I vibe with that because, in my family, there was a lot of drug and alcohol use and stuff. So I didn't drink until, it wasn't until I'm not going to say 25, but I didn't drink till I was 18, 19 because I was in fear of, like, man, if I get drunk, am I going to be like this family member? Am I going to be violent? And I didn't want to put any friends through that. So I refrained from drinking. And I drank because my friends were just like, yo, you'll be fine. And if you do get out of hand, like, we'll handle it. We'll take care of you. And so
so you had that, you were able to have like that comfort zone or whatever around you.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have drank until I had that comfort zone for sure.
Right. Yeah. That's tough stuff to go through, especially as a kid. And what he's talking about, and obviously it still resonates with him. He smoked weed when he was younger, and then slowly got into drinking. But I think he's had more issues with cigarettes, from what I read. He's it's taken him a while to get off his cigarettes.
One of the things I really liked from Under Pressure was that build up, and I feel like he played it very well because throughout the album, you're thinking he portrays Nikki as a girlfriend or as someone that he's in a relationship with. But the thing in his lyrics is that he makes it so ambiguous. He never comments on anything about her body or anything. He just comments about how she makes him feel. Right. And then it isn't until I think somewhere after the 10th track that he has this whole song, and then it's like nicotine. You're like, oh shit, this whole person you've been talking about, it's not a person. I just took it as a person. It's actually a cigarette. So then it's cool because then it makes you want to go back and listen to all that stuff. And like, okay, you were stressed out and were looking for some cigarettes at that time. Okay.
Right.
So it kind of shows this dependency.
Yeah, I think Logic does a great job of speaking personal, diving into his own personal life and putting it on wax and putting it out there for the world to see and kind of being vulnerable, which not as many artists do, especially on that level. So I think Logic does that really well compared to some other artists that might be as popular as him.
Mm-hmm. And in the second part of the song, I think as we're talking about both parts.
Yeah.
But I really liked some of the growth that he talks about. So, and he also taps on later on or throughout the album. And, instead of window shopping, now he's shopping for windows for his son's room. And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. And this is the song where he did say that he found peace in rap and he's happiest when not endlessly scrolling on his phone. So that's where I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like that all contributes to No Pressure.
Yeah, I thought he was spitting on this. He's got some great lines on here. Yeah, it's a dope track. I love the beat switch on the second part of the song. I thought it was done really well.
The thing I don't like about tracks that have two is that sometimes, I feel like most of the time, Anderson .Paak, Logic, Kendrick, where the second beat is almost better than the first.
Yeah.
Or I'm just like, dude, make this stand alone. I don't want to have to go through this. I mean, word of mouth, Ludacris, where you have Welcome to Atlanta as the bonus track, but you have to listen to like 5 minutes of, I forget what track that is, but it has like a bunch of disturbing the DTP people on it. It's like, but I want to hear Welcome to Atlanta, and I have to fast forward through this shit. And then back then when you had a CD player, like you can't just, like on an iPod where you grab the dot and push it, like you have to hold on to that thing and hope and get it just right. So that shit sucked. But anyways, Soul Food 2.
Soul Food 2. Another really dope beat. Some interesting lines on here. When he says, money ain't the key to happiness, and this is proof. Modern day rap is like a golden era spoof, but a few of us were searching within the second renaissance. So again, he's pointing out that the current era of hip hop is not what it was, and he continues to pay homage to the golden era, the 90s era of hip hop, and he references it. And I think that's where a lot of his foundation comes from. So he's going to always compare that era to the current era. And but he's claiming he's one of the few that's continuing that, continuing that style of music where it has messages and it has a little more depth to it. So it's cool that he's aware of that. He's pointing that out. He's saying that I'm continuing the golden era of hip hop in this new age, which is cool. Rap definitely isn't what it used to be. It's definitely, especially at the highest, level of popularity, it's not about skill or being unique or bringing something new and being original. It's more about, all right, who can make a song with the most vibes, and that's gonna get you to turn up the most.
Yeah, and that's where in J. Cole's album, where he kind of just talks about that longevity, where it's like that's not gonna get you anywhere. So it's cool that he's touching on that. And as we talked about a couple songs ago, where people, you mentioned him saying people telling him what to rap about and just not put anything. Just put stuff out just for people to vibe to, and it's like, yeah, but I want to put out some timeless stuff and not something that'll just get you to jam. And just like movies, I've noticed in recent movies how they just put in some. If you watch Trolls, like it's not anything in there that will age well. So if you have Trolls or anything else that are flossing,
it's
like
all references to today,
to today. That's like a fad, really big fad right now. But like in 10 years or so, we're gonna be like, oh,
as
nice
opposed
stance.
to like Pulp Fiction, that you don't need to have seen it in the 90s to understand what's going on or understand the references. You can watch it today and understand everything.
Right. So it's just dense with all this stuff that you're going to have no idea what they're even talking about.
Right.
But I just realized, I didn't put it in my notes, but Soul Food 2 is another one that has another beat onto it. And then that's where like he starts talking about Raquel and everything. Or not talking about her, but just referenced her.
Yeah. And on this song, I think you were referencing this earlier. He says he's the greatest lyricist to ever do it. He says that in this song, which... is I admire the confidence, but I don't know if I could agree with him.
Matthew speaks. He respects what you're saying, but I don't know.
I don't know if I could put you above
Blue
Royce or Elzai.
Yeah.
Or Blue, for that matter.
Yeah, I hear it. The second track was interesting because he's basically telling a story of like he's on this space. It's like 20. What did he say? 20. Whatever.
Right.
It's in the future, and they're on this spaceship. And Thalia, who's been doing the expositions between tracks, she's the voice of the ship, kind of like in Solo, where like they.
Yeah, and
over.
I think that's a call back to one of his older albums, the Incredible True Story.
Oh,
which
okay.
the whole album was about that, about humans leaving Earth.
Okay. But yeah, but it's two guys. They happen to discover this planet that's has some civilization, but it's nowhere that any humans have been. And they get there and they check it out, and they're basically, they're faced with like, hey, do we check out this new oxygen? Like, what's going on here? Stuff like that. But it ends by kind of saying like, oh, we're out here looking for a new civilization. No pressure. Mm-hmm. No pressure in saving the civilization. So I don't know, since I haven't listened to that mixtape you have, I don't know if we can come together to find like what that, if I'm not reading too deep into it, of what that no pressure means. But I mean, from here, it's obviously like, oh yeah, no, go find out if there's a new place for us to inhabit as our civilization as we know whittles away, no pressure. There's like this confidence in it.
Yeah.
But, if they reference anything from that would allude to,
But I like the premise of it. I like the idea of talking about humans, having to escape Earth and find another planet. And once you've done that, there kind of is no pressure. It's like, well, we're in outer space, so the chances of us actually making it work is pretty slim. So there's no pressure to actually to succeed.
Dude, the stakes are high. There's hella pressure.
The stakes are high, but you understand there's two ways to look at it. It could be the stakes are high and if we don't accomplish this, we're all going to die out. Or it's like, well, we've gotten this far and, it's pretty slim that it's actually going to work. So we'll just see if it works.
I don't know if I want to commend that silver lining or not. It's like, hey, we're fucked anyway. So like,
yeah, just, if it works, we'll make it happen.
If not, then like we were fucked anyways.
You're still going to try for it either way. You're still going to try to do the same things. I don't think that changes your action of wanting to survive. It's just looking at it differently.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe at that point I would have all my eggs in one basket to where I'd be like, fuck, if this didn't work.
Yeah, it's kind of like, fuck it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
We're fucked. I guess. It's all good. So I see you, Matt. I mean,
yeah.
I guess, yeah, that's cool. Perfect. That's great. That's perfect.
Another dope beat. I like the bounce to it. I love the video game samples. It's one of those Brandon certified hip hopping tracks.
Dude, we're gonna make stickers out of that.
He's just spitting on this. It's a dope song. I dig it.
It's cool. I mean, there's I really like mashup albums, and so there's one Marshall versus Capcom where they have Eminem rapping on verses, from mostly the Eminem show, but to Street Fighter stuff. So this is, it's dope. A little different when you add video games into it, but it could be cool. Yeah. So fire.
And that's definitely been, video games have been sampled a lot in hip hop. It's definitely, a lot of artists grew up playing video games like we did, especially if you're around our age. You grew up playing Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis.
Especially those 90s games. Those make such cool beats if you could do that right.
All that 8-bit and some other artists that have done it really well is Clear Soul Forces have sampled video games a lot. They got some dope tracks that do that. Del the Funky Homo Sapien has done it. I'm blanking. I think Lupe Fiasco has as well. Video games have been a part of hip hop culture, for probably since the early 90s. Which it's dope. He samples Street Fighter on this quite a bit, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. So
it's kind of a lighter track before we go into Man I Is.
Yeah, it's pretty light. It's a nice kind of, but yeah, it's all right. I didn't really I wasn't feeling it too much. Not gonna say that I would skip it, but it's not something I'd really need to listen to. But yeah, Man I Is, the next track. Immediately when you press play on this song, you and I were just talking about this before the pod, but I was like, similar to what you were saying a couple songs ago, where it's like, I know this song.
Right.
And so I looked it up. I looked the song up and it said Outkast Body Yaddy Dopalicious. And I was like, nah. Because I stopped. I didn't listen to the chorus yet.
Gotcha.
And so I was like, I know this is Erykah Badu, but I don't know what song. So then I just went to one of her albums. I went to Mama's Gun, and it was Didn't You Know, which is like the second, if not the first, it's the second track on the album. I was like, oh shit, here it is. And then I went back to listen to Logic's song, got all the way through, and I was like, okay, this is
Right.
Outkast.
You sampled both of them.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as I heard the Spotty Dopalicious sample, I was like, this just makes me want to listen to that song. You know, it makes me want to turn this off and listen to that. And that's, you know, it is a thin line. You know, it's tough to do that, to sample famous hip hop songs in your hip hop song. You know, I could, it makes more sense to sample a famous jazz or R&B or soul or rock song and then make it into a hip hop song. Mm-hmm. But if you sample another hip hop, a sample that another hip hop song has made really popular and done it in a great way, it's, you know, you're almost just kind of you're feeding off of the success they already had with that sample.
That made me think of an odd question, but is it, and here it is, like, is it fair to sample these tracks? So I mean, let's think of another Outkast song that's not as popular. So maybe not Wheels of Steel, because that's a great song, but like, what about Bombs or something like that? It's it's a catchy tune, but it's not one of, I don't think you're gonna find it in their top 10 tracks if you're looking at Outkast. So why is someone like Logic sampling the well-known songs and not some of the like the lower, quote unquote, lower songs?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he needed to. But I understand why he did it. He loves Outkast, and he probably loves that song, so he wanted to make a beat to it. It's the same reason Lupe Fiasco did on, I think it was Food and Liquor 2. He sampled Troy, the same sample that's in Troy. Mm-hmm. And Pete Rock was angry at Lupe for doing that. He's like, why are you taking this sample that I've already done in a perfect way? Why are you taking it and making it into your own song about something completely different? And so he was really upset at Lupe. And I understood where Pete Rock was coming from, because he's like, dude, already used the sample in the best way possible. Now you're trying to take away from that. And, you know, you're not doing it in a better way. Mm-hmm. So why even go there?
And that's what my question kind of gears towards, into what you were saying before. Like, yeah, why are you taking the top profile songs of an artist? And especially something that's been perfected, why don't you do
My guess is that
else?
he just really loves those horns from that song, the sample.
Why wouldn't you?
Right.
So, you know, I mean, I feel it. I mean, I kind of...
And it's not saying that the beat is bad. The beat is great. I love the beat on Man I Is. But it just makes me want to listen to Erykah Badu and Outkast. Mm-hmm. That's my complaint with it. Not that it's a bad beat.
And another question pops up of like, what's the right way to sample someone's song? So I mean, I just realized the other day. So I mean, you have the song "Bless the Rains Down in Africa" by Toto,
right?
And then Weezer redid it.
Yeah.
You know who else also did it?
Who?
Jason Derulo in 2011. He also did it. I found that on accident. But it's like, how many times does something need to be redone that you can just leave it alone?
Right.
But, you know, but the difference, and I guess getting back to my question though, is that Jason Derulo didn't take the song verbatim and redo it like Weezer did. He just took elements of it in the beat and is doing it. So like, I forgot my question, but I mean, like, when is it right to sample something verbatim? And then when is it okay to just use elements of it for your track? Right. Kind of like we're talking about with Lupe, with Logic,
Right.
Like, where's that balance?
He's just using the horns from that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think, you might have listeners like me who know what that's from and just want to listen to that song rather than listen to your song. That if I have the choice to listen to either one, I'm going to listen to the Outkast one. But I understand he's paying homage in this song. He shouts out Andre 3000 and Erykah Badu. And
Yeah, we don't mean to make a big deal over horns. It's just, but it's the point of like, I think it's a good conversation to talk about sampling, whether you're doing it verbatim or just taking a part of it. But I have to say, like, for this song though, I don't know if this is. I think you could argue this is one of the definitions for why this album is called No Pressure, because you just see a lot of growth and a lot of maturity within these, and him talking about having to be independent at a young age of, I have to tie my own shoelaces, or I grew up all alone, and the things that come up with.
Right.
We've talked about being a latchkey kid in another pod, and and I don't know. He's just happy with as the song implies, he's happy with how he turned out.
I actually really like his rapping on this. I like his lyrics. I thought it was a really good song. I don't think he needed to sample Outkast and Erykah Badu to make this a great song.
For sure. I agree with that. Yeah. I really like I transcend and I transform poetic vision in rare form. Growing up, nobody there for him. I promise when I have a family, I'm going to be there for him. And was it this track or was it another one? Where he's talking about like his family wasn't really there for him as much growing up, but he wants to, that is a different one, where he kind of wants to be there for his and be able to support them and also surround himself with people that don't ask him for shit. That's what I want. There's people in my life that I feel are anchors, and I would love to shed people that only want shit.
Right.
So I ain't got shit to give out.
Dope song. I enjoyed it.
Do you see any of the, because Thalia talks about like anime, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, and Samurai Champloo? Mm-hmm. You watch any of those?
No. I've actually never really watched anime.
You never even watched Dragon Ball Z or anything? Mm-mm. You grew up in the 90s?
Yeah. What channel was it? I don't even know what channel that was on.
It was on
WBN or something?
It was on WB, on either UPN, but it came on at like, when I first noticed, it was coming on at like 6 in the morning.
I never watched it because my older brother never watched it. None of my friends watched it, so I don't know how I would get into it if no one around me watched it.
Oh, my cousin introduced me to it.
I was watching Power Rangers, bro.
So was I. Shit. I was getting a jar of peanut butter and plopping down in front of the TV when I got off school. So,
the next track, Dad Bod. I really like this song. I really love the beat. I thought it was cool just him opening up about his life now, of him being a dad and what his day-to-day life is.
Which is super basic.
It's super basic, and
I don't mean that in a bad way. But
no, it's not. It's not a bad thing, and I think it's a cool thing to do in hip hop that you don't hear a lot.
Yeah, it's a shout out because, like we talked about before, where people want him to rap about this, and that. I was like, nah, dude, I'm gonna rap about what I want to do. But he's also noting in the song, like, they want me to rap about all like my daily life. Here you go. I go to the store. There's fans out there. I tell them to go away. I change diapers and this and that. Like, it's really like this. He's kind of painting this picture that he really, despite the fame and everything that's attached to him, he's really not that much different from us.
Right. Yeah, and after hearing this album, I could understand why he would retire, because he's made it. He has nothing really left to prove. He's had so many number one albums, and he's had a lot of success. And now he's a dad, and he loves his family and wants to be, closer to his family. What does he have to rap about?
Well, he
can make albums about, that are centered around dad bod, but is that compelling?
I'm going to say yes, because when we were talking, I forget who we were talking about, but we mentioned Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and Jay-Z. And it's like, life when you're in your 40s and plus, what do you rap about at this point? And so, as we'll talk about in future pods, each person has found, in Dr. Dre, they have each found something different. I like the Jay-Z route where if you compare 444 to Unreasonable Doubt, it's two different topics. And you can see the growth in his music. You think of songs like Big Pimpin', and then you think of the one song with OJ that he mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
The Story of OJ. Sorry.
Story of OJ.
Story of OJ. And it's like, those are on two different wavelengths.
No, yeah. Jay-Z did a great job on 444.
Yeah. But that's my point, though, is that, Logic could retire, but I feel like time from rap and growing up, further maturing, raising his kid, he's going to come back with more. With deeper
I agree
stuff.
with that. And I think we need to, especially in the hip hop world, we need to give more of a pathway for older artists to make music and support them. And we have artists already leading the way. We have our Royces and our Jay-Z's that are in their late 40s, mid to late 40s, still making great music.
I agree with you, but then it's also at the same time, it's almost, to say Royce is almost unfair because he honed and perfected his craft so much, though, that I don't see any. I feel you're 100% right, but I don't see any of these artists doing that, where they start producing, their lyrics are tighter, they're talking about deeper shit, they're educating at
that's
the same
what Logic
time.
would have to do. He would have to make music outside of himself. I feel like all of his music has been about him and his life. Maybe some of I haven't listened to all of his albums, but especially this album and Under Pressure, it's about his life and what he's going through, and he's looking internal and external. So what Royce has done differently is he's gone outside of himself and he's rapping about the world.
Oh, he transcended.
He transcended. So that's something that older artists are going to have to do when you can't rap about yourself because you're successful and you're comfortable and you have a family and you live in a nice house and you're not worried about paying the bills. That's when you first start rapping. That's what most artists rap about is their struggle. So what happens when you don't have that everyday struggle?
That's an interesting point. I guess when someone famous or rich or an athlete, when they start talking about problems and the issues in the world, do you feel like they don't have much of a leg in the conversation because you feel that they're too far removed from that?
It depends. It depends on that person and how in tune they are with the world around them. They could be totally separated and secluded. You could say almost like a Kanye West, where he's almost outside of everything, kind of lives in his own world. He may be disconnected from a few things. As opposed to a Royce who's got it, I feel like he's got his ear to the streets a little bit more than other more popular artists.
All right. So from Dad Bod, we go to 5 hooks. So it was when because I go through I listen to the albums as much as I can and then I read the lyrics.
Yeah.
And so it mentioned, because I was like, why the hell is this called 5 hooks? There aren't even 5 hooks in the song. But there's only 5 hooks in the whole album.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. Thanks for
it's kind of
out.
like, he's beating his own chest, saying, I'm making a pure hip hop album in today's day and age. And, he's talking his shit on this. And it's again about how he's come from nothing to be where he is.
It's basically what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a cool song. I wasn't, amazed by it or anything. But yeah, he's got some cool lines. He says, I started with $1 and a dream like Jermaine in '09. You know what I mean? Fresh on the scene like a first take. I dropped my first tape, then felt the earth shake. But let's accelerate. Dropped the second tape, 2011. Now we elevate. Def Jam want to sign me. It's time to celebrate.
So it kind of, again, I can't think of any other artists where I'm like, oh, that's a this reference or that's a this reference. So, it's, we bring that up. It's like, yeah, Logic is kind of like cycling, really showing his homage to these people. And so I'm kind of like, I'm not going to say that it's bad, but I'm not going to say that it's great either. So
Well, how would you compare it to how Blue did it on the Miles album? Because he did that a lot.
I mean, but I don't know. Like I didn't feel like it was like I don't want to say that I was doused in it, but I mean it was subtle. I mean, but I'm also not too. I'm more familiar with Kanye West, Kendrick, Outkast, Erykah Badu than I am with Miles Davis. So like any reference that that Blue makes to Miles Davis, I may not pick up. But that kind of goes back to our other conversation where you're saying like, yeah, you know, the horns and that it's kind of overused, or Thalia being, you know, whatever else. But it's like it's cool for people that ignorance is bliss, where it's like
Right,
it's
where
cool
they
for
can
the
discover
people
that.
can discover, but the people that already know it, they're like, what the fuck? So
Right.
I don't know how well versed you are with Miles Davis, but like, did you feel that it was used?
Well, I'm not
anymore?
even talking about the Miles Davis part of it. I'm talking about all the artists he mentioned in all of the song throughout the songs.
So that's different. I mean, because he's just like shouting people out, but he's not, you know, using their style throughout the songs that he's doing.
Right.
And
He's
it's
just paying
really
homage to them through his lyrics.
yeah, and it's really only like I think 2 tracks that he shot, you know, one full track and then part of another one where he's, you know,
Shouting
naming
them
all these people. Where throughout Logic's album, if he's not sampling a beat, he's interpolating their flow for a couple verses and then whatever else. So like Outkast is referenced one way or another throughout this album at least 4 times, and that's not even considering Under Pressure, where in track 8, Never Enough, he references Outkast again. And track 11, he does something with that to me sounded kind of Kendrick Lamar-ish. But I didn't pick, in short, I didn't pick that up from Blue.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know.
So then we go into Dark Place. And he definitely opens up about his mental health and some of his depression that he's gone through. I really like the line when he says, "Going berserk like Peter down in Initech. It's deeper than the surface. I'm searching for purpose. I'm tired of searching for logic on Google on purpose just to read that I'm worthless." So crazy line. I love they referenced Office Space.
I was going to ask if you knew that was from.
Yeah, it's a great movie. But I mean, those are deep lines. You know, saying that he's searching himself on Google, and you know, seeing all. He's only seeing the hate that he gets. He's not seeing all the love and praise. It's almost like he's almost looking for reasons to not like himself.
It's like he's in a dark place.
Right. Yeah.
That's the name of the track. Holy shit.
So, yeah, I mean, he's looking for reasons and ways to not like himself, which is, I'm sure we all go through that. We all have our moments. And I think it's great that he's vulnerable enough to put that in a song and put that out there, because I'm sure 99.9 of all the rappers out there go through the same shit. They just don't talk about it.
Yeah, they just don't. But I mean, that's where, you know, as we went through Kid Cudi, like his whole album is kind of based on this dark place.
Right.
That, you know,
he did a whole album like this.
Yeah. And so I thought it was cool. I mean, I think it is vulnerability that a lot of people don't share. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about that with DaBaby a little bit, how he's just kind of, there was, I think, 1 or 2 tracks.
He did open up about some stuff.
Yeah, but he didn't go as deep as we would have liked, but still being vulnerable here and there. But it's almost like, especially in certain cultures, like for a male especially, to be vulnerable is to be considered weak. So the fact that like you have people coming out on wax doing it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But in the end, he has, it looks like Alan Watts. I'm not familiar with this person, but I really like the stuff that he was saying, and just saying that like people are really fascinated with, if they're not about money, then they're about status. And so that's just something that's always kind of stuck with me.
There's a lot of that.
J. Cole talks about that as like, on Anderson .Paak's album, it's like, I'm coming down the block in this car and it's rented, but I'm still in it. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. So
Yeah.
but it's interesting. But I mean, he kind of ends with asking like, or with saying that if people are really to like look into, well, how do you actually really need all these things? And if you were to ask yourself why, he comes to the conclusion that people say like, I actually don't really need that, but I want
Right.
to have this image. So I thought it was an interesting track.
So the next one is A to Z.
Creative.
Yeah, pretty creative. He goes through the alphabet. And it's a cool song. I just didn't hold my interest as much as some of the other songs.
You think Black Alicious did it better?
You did it way better. I don't think anyone could top Gift of Gab on that song.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I mean, but yeah, this one was interesting. I think he's just kind of hip hopping, like not doing too much.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't until I was reading the lyrics that I even like noticed that I picked up on it, and I was like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, he didn't do it in such an obvious way,
right.
which is cool.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this album, go back and check that, and you'll see like what he was doing.
So next we go to Heard Him Say, which you kind of mentioned before. That I thought this was kind of like an ode to Kanye West again. So another homage.
There's a couple people in there because originally when he said, like, he has a line in there that's goes, "I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not," and it made me think of Kendrick Lamar on "If Not Damn Then to Pimp a Butterfly."
Yeah.
But when I was looking at that, it was saying that the person that came up with that line is actually Kurt Cobain, which I didn't know. But yeah, you could. I mean, but again, that's still a lot of shouting out people or using their stuff.
And another, some of the lyrics are also kind of repeating what he said before of, coming up, he wanted all of these things. He wanted all these material things in his life. He wanted money. And once he got all of it, once he got to the top, he realized that it really wasn't all of that he hoped it would be. He still wanted more from life.
And you kind of get the feel that he's, because in the chorus it says, "I saw this kid, kind of looks upset, and you heard him say this," and you kind of feel like it's this motivational talk with that kid of like, hey, you're upset now. I know you're going through, some shit at work. I know you have your demons. I know you're dealing with this,
it's
but
a
it'll get
motivational
better.
song.
Yeah, it's 100% a, motivational track. At the end, though, that kind of threw me off is that Thalius notes that this is the end of the No Pressure album. And so I was like, these last two tracks, like, are these bonus tracks, or are they just, did we get the meat and potatoes of what the title of the album is, and then these are just something else? So I guess with that, we can move into Amen. And maybe it is. Maybe that is what it is. Because in this one, he's basically thankful for life and where he is. And that, I like this line that he says, "We make plans and God laughs." So it's kind of like saying that you can do whatever you want, but destiny's going to run its course.
Right. Yeah. You can plan all you want, but you're going to run into detours, and you're going to have to make new plans. God's going to throw you some curveballs.
So it kind of alludes to like, let destiny take its course. And I think he's thankful for how it turned out for him at the end, going from, started from the bottom. Now he's here. Kind of thing. So
yeah, I think this is him being grateful for where he is in life and what he's been able to accomplish. It's kind of like his bow at the end of the show. He's taking his bow and saying, he's made it this far and he's satisfied. He doesn't feel like he has anything left to prove or put out there, which I think he'll feel differently in a year or two.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's gonna grow and mature more. I mean, you're 30 and it's still young, and you have a lot more to do after that. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but he's not gone. It goes back to our old conversation.
He's in a very not a unique position, but he's in a very he's in a great position where he can retire.
Oh yeah,
most independent rappers do not have that luxury to just say, "Oh, let me put up the mic for a couple of years and then do something else." Most of them, they have to make music to make a living. They have to tour and they have to do all these things to sustain their lifestyle. And Logic has gotten to the point he's so successful that he can hang it up and go to Twitch and can be completely fine. He doesn't have to worry about making money from music ever again because his albums are still going to stream. He's still going to be getting paid from them for years to come.
Oh, yeah, he's going to get royalties.
So, yeah,
for
he's
days.
in a very privileged position to do what he's about to do, which is great. I mean, he's put himself there. And I'm sure a lot of other artists would love to be in his position.
Yeah. And I guess the last track, Obediently Yours, where it's not even, he's not rapping or anything like that.
Yeah,
it's just Orson Welles.
Orson Welles sample, which is cool. I mean, he's saying a lot here.
He's saying a lot, but I have to ask, does it fit the album?
Yeah, it seems a little out of place. It doesn't. I mean, you have Orson Welles at the beginning and you have him at the end, so they're kind of like bookends. But it's not referenced throughout the album, and it's not interwoven in any way. Not that it was obvious. But I don't know. I could do without this. Like if I didn't hear this, I would be fine. It wouldn't make me like the album any more or less. It's just kind of there.
For the record, like it's a great speech that he implements and it raises a lot of topics for great discussion. But as you're saying, like there's just nothing. This album is basically his maturity and his growth and how things that affected him as a kid are kind of no longer and kind of letting go of the pressure of the things that really bothered him all along. And so when you bring in Orson Welles, who's talking about like how we're kind of indebted to society and we have obligations to do and we're born a slave and we should be given back to society, I'm not quite seeing where that fits, at least as of yet. And granted, like, you know, it's fair to say this album's not even really 2 weeks old yet. And maybe after a couple more listens and some time, because I mean, it feels like it takes about a couple months, maybe if not a year, for an album to really sink in. So maybe this will sink in a year from now. And I'm willing to say that. But as of right now, the amount of listens I've given, I don't feel like it fits in.
Right.
But ask me a year from now, and maybe I'll say something different.
Right. Yeah, it might hit in a different way. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, that's the album right there. What after listening to this, did this make you want to, you know, go back and check out his mixtapes and his other albums? Did this is like, okay, Logic is dope, let me go revisit everything?
You know, in a weird way, it actually doesn't, because I feel like this album paints this kind of picture that he reached his peak. And when you go from under pressure to no pressure and you learn about all the things that he talked about and how he's talking about these things that are now in his past, but they have contributed to who he is. Because I relate to a lot of these things that he's talking about. At 31, I'm definitely not the person that I was in my 20s, more or less. So like, man, would I want to hear any of the thoughts that I had back when I'm 20? It's like, that's not necessarily what I'm saying. But if he's refined at this point and he's really honed his craft, I don't see why I would go back and listen to other. I'm not immediately going to go back.
Well, don't you want to listen to his journey of how he got to this point, how he got to his peak?
And I think that's a good way to say it. Like, but no, not necessarily.
Right.
I guess maybe I look at it like a video game where I'm like, well, if you're playing Arkham City and you just played Arkham Asylum, if you played Arkham Asylum, you're going to Arkham City. Guaranteed, most of these people don't want to go back to what the other game was because this one was so much better.
Right.
But you know, maybe I should go back and check them out. What about you?
Not really. I really enjoyed this album, and I enjoyed revisiting Under Pressure. You know, going into this episode, but there's just something about Logic that doesn't grab me like it should, or you know, just I like the messages, I like his beats, but there's just something missing for me. It doesn't grab me in the way that some other artists do.
That's kind of how I feel. I mean, I feel like the only artists as of recent that I've gone back to their older stuff was Odyssey. When I've like stumbled upon him and I was like, oh, this is cool. I definitely want to hear some of the older stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just the way that
Right.
No
Yeah.
Pressure is painted is that like this is a progression. So like
Right.
if this is where you're at, then
Yeah,
I'm not
that's a good
inclined to
shout
go back.
about Odyssey, because when I first heard Odyssey, I had a completely different feeling than when I get with Logic. Like Odyssey pulled me in. I was like, oh, holy shit! Like this guy is making music that I can resonate with and that I want to revisit over and over, and that I'm checking for all his new music.
But he's also not doing it in this line of progression. So I mean, like, if you read, let's say, first thing that came to mind, like if you read Hunger Games, you read the third one, you are kind of like, well, shit, I already know that this person dies and this person dies. Like, do I really want to go back and read the other ones?
Right.
Where if you read the second one, maybe you'll go back and read the first one, and then you definitely have to read the third one after that.
Yeah.
So that's how it made me feel. That's the closest thing I can relate it to.
Yeah, it's a dope album. I think Logic is extremely talented. I think he makes good music. I think he gets hated on a lot on the internet for not valid reasons. And I think there's a lot of artists that get shitted on. That's just part of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
But and everyone deals with that in different ways. Some people are better at letting it bounce off of them. Some people take it in.
That's
and
one
it
of the
affects
things
them.
he talked about too, is that like and maybe it was A Dark Place, but he references it twice where it's like, I'm not black enough, I'm not hood enough, I'm not this person
Right.
enough. And so he touches on those things, and it was cool to hear, because it's like, yeah, man, like that must be a trip to hear all these things that influence you. Like, no wonder you have a dark place and being
Yeah.
self-conscious about the music you put
Right.
out.
I think for me, with his music, is that he's, and not that it's a problem, but for me as a listener, I don't want to hear him complaining about what he thinks about everyone, what everyone thinks about him. It's like, it's a little whiny to me. He's whining about what other people think about him, and that they're telling him what kind of music to make, and he searches for the negativity. It's like, I can hear that once and it's cool, but I don't need to revisit that.
Yeah, I feel it. I mean, I feel like it makes sense, because if you're gonna make an album called No Pressure, where is there no pressure of? So like, if you're referencing what that is, like, I'm shedding all that shit, I feel it. But yeah, I mean, it's different though, because no one really talks about how they get shit on. Eminem mentions that.
Right. Yeah, then no one's making music like this, or not that I can think of right now, but yeah, not many artists are, especially on this level of popularity, are talking about what other people think of them, which could be a bad thing. Do we need that as listeners? Like, do we need that peek behind that curtain of your life where you think about that stuff? I'm sure his loyal fan base loves it, and they get to connect with him on that level.
Yeah.
But since I'm not like a stan of Logic, I don't need to revisit this. You know what I mean?
So, Matt, if you're gonna sum up some rap thoughts on this album, Everything Said, what are you gonna say?
I think it's a dope album. I thought the production outshined the lyricism a little bit. I thought No ID did a great job. Even with my complaints about him sampling already famous hip hop songs that use the same samples, I still really enjoyed the production. I would definitely play this for younger people that I was around. Like I mentioned before, since I coach college kids, if I was around them, I'd probably play this, because I know they would probably...
It's safe.
It's safe for them to listen to this. I'm sure some of them are fans of it. I don't know how much I would bump this on my own, like while I'm driving or something. This isn't necessarily going to be the album that I'm going to go to.
Mine, I mean, overall, like, I think I would say that I appreciate and I respect Logic. He's not like, there's only so many artists that are on my radar where I'm like, I'm gonna buy your album, I'm interested in the next single you put out and stuff like that. He's not up there, but I respect his music, and I think he talks a lot about a lot of cool stuff. That's interesting that you said you thought the production outshined the lyricism. So I think that if I didn't know the samples, I would probably agree. But I feel like I'm looking more at the lyricism here, as with any artist. The production is fine and it keeps me interested, but I didn't like the choice in beats. I don't think there's anything wrong with the beats themselves, but I didn't like the choice of them.
Gotcha.
I like the production on Under Pressure better. There's just a lot of, I mean, I have bounce on rotation for my running mix, but I just didn't get any. There weren't too many bangers out of this one for me, and but it was a cool album. Playing for my girlfriend and on a car ride on a long trip, and want something to actually delve into.
So yeah, that's our rap thoughts on Logic's last album, No Pressure.
Thanks for
tuning in.
Thanks for joining us,
and we'll see you next week.
Peace.